Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to One on One. I'm Nirad Tewarie. Tonight, I'm talking to Wayne Chance, who is the president and founder of Vision on Mission. You've probably heard about it, but if not, I'll let Mr. Chance explain what it's about.
Well, Vision on Mission, I want to say a pleasant good afternoon. I should say that to the listening audience. I want to say that Vision on Mission is an organization that was birthed within the prison system. I once been an incarcerated person. While incarcerated, I recognize the need for an organization to be formed within the prison to help give direction and vision to the persons or inmates in the prison system, and that's how the organization was birthed in 1995.
Now, but today, how is the organization doing? There was a time when Vision on Mission was very strong, had money to go and,
It's true.
take programs forward and so on. How are you doing today?
Vision on Mission was very vibrant, very visible within the communities, doing a number of different stuff and things like that. I remember via the Office of the Attorney General, when there was funding available, we would go to different communities and we would lecture on various subjects that will help deter crime and etc. When the Hindu Credit Union was paying staff, we had a core staff that was able to, do monitoring of the inmates, really whole reintegrating process and stuff like that. As it is now, we are receiving funding through the Ministry of Social Delivery, and we are very thankful. But to this date, we have not received in terms of funding to meet the core staff, so that have crippled us in a number of different ways and have limited us in a number of different ways to really meet the objectives of the organization meaningfully.
Why do you think that is? Because you have a board which comprises of several key people involved in rehabilitation, reform, incarceration, and prevention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to say that you're an organization without a structure.
Well, my board of directors have been knocking on every door. I must say I have a board of directors that is very active. Again, it always left to those in authority to make the final decision. I think it's through the board of directors. A number of assistants Vision on Mission have received must be accredited to the board. And I must say that there is still a lot of advocating to take place, and there are a lot of things that those that are in authority to do something need to come to the understanding, if I'm speaking right, in the proper context, to release the kind of funding in organizations such as mine to really bring a reduction on crime.
But we're seeing government went down south to Palo Seco and got involved in another rehabilitation project for prisoners.
Mm.
This one is religious in nature.
Mm.
So it's not to say that government isn't involved. They just may not be giving your organization the level of funding that you would like, but maybe they're trying to spread it among as many as is possible.
I'm also a part of a cabinet appointed committee by government to look at a comprehensive plan for prison reform through the Ministry of Social Development, and I'm quite acquainted in terms of the funding, the 500,000 that was to be distributed to the various organizations. However, Vision on Mission was a part of the whole proposal in terms of requesting funding. Our proposal was one of which had a very high expenditure in terms of, because there's a lot of things that these organizations is now acquiring that Vision on Mission have already acquired. Things such as an in-transit facility. Here it is in Palo Seco, there is an opening of an in-transit facility. But mind you, Vision on Mission have an in-transit facility over a year now, that where we house inmates of the same quality and standard. We provide that at number 23 Second Private Road, Chamfley, and there are inmates, there are deportees there and stuff like that. So we are up to par in terms of what's happening. So I'm glad that on that side of the country, such a program can open to facilitate inmates within the South region.
But what about what Vision on Mission is trying to do? Do you think that you are part of the cabinet appointed committee and so on? Do you think that that work is being recognized, given that the Prisons Commissioner is one of the people on your board, the Winston Cooper, who is the Assistant Commissioner in charge of Community Relations, is on the board?
But there's a lot more I would like to see get done. There's a lot more involvement that I would like to see take place. One have to be mindful that the people who are on my board are commissioners and people in senior position within their own space. So to get the full and undivided attention sometimes will be very difficult. But as I said earlier on, there are people within certain areas or in authority that still need to come to the understanding that the kind of funding that we are requesting is needful.
Now, you mentioned $500,000 to look at the issue of prison reform and rehabilitation and so on. Is that enough?
No, that is inadequate. That is a stretch.
What can $500,000 do?
Well, they probably buy a bed and probably buy a bed sheet or a pillow, a toothbrush or a blue soap for an inmate. But in terms of really dealing with the whole issue of recidivism and dealing with the whole issue of rehabilitation and coming and in terms of the resettlement policy and all of that, 500,000 can begin to do any kind of things in regards to that. And we are very conscious of the crime wave right now in the country, and to really bring a reduction, you are talking about investing millions of dollars, because eventually we will have what you call a wild, wild west society. As you could already see, people are just running out in the road on the promenade, shooting, pulling out the gun and shooting you there, shooting you anyway, anytime, anyhow. So this is what the society is turning into. The youths today are developing what you call a terrorist mentality. One that will use anything, do anything to fulfill the desire. They don't care if they get caught. Their mentality is, if I live to grow up and not when I grow up. That's the mentality of the youth, and I don't think that the social sector and those who are responsible for implementing programs and going into the community and meeting the people who really are the problem is really reaching in. I don't think that what they are doing is really having the kind of result and vision that we would want to have for the young people, because as it is now, the criminals are giving the young people more vision, more hope, than what the people that is responsible is given right now.
Now, we heard Lennox Smith, or we've been hearing Lennox Smith, the community activist from the Mobile Laventil Improvement Organization and other organizations, saying that the corporate sector and the public at large, and even government, gives money to the big organizations such as Serval and Feel and so on, but not the organizations working in communities, and that is crippling any effort to stem crime and to stem the violence that we're seeing. What do you think?
I think what you are saying and what Lennox Smith is saying and what other organizations like his own and my own is saying is true. The money to really do the work is not filtered into the organization that can really get into the communities and really have an effect and really could really get the attention of the persons that need help. I think it's not reaching, and the money is reaching into the hands and into the organization who are not prepared. Mind you, I'm telling you bluntly, they are not prepared to meet face to face with the criminal element out there. They are prepared to implement programs, to put a good face, a good public relation to the public, but they are not ready to meet with the core criminals. The people that meet with the core criminals and deal with the situation face on is our organization such as mine and Lennox Smith and other organizations out there, and we are not getting the kind of attention because our organization, people like Professor Dursoran, who's also a director of my board, who on my board, nonetheless, they are the ones who really getting the kind of funding to look at all kind of policies and all kind of implementation. But the fact of the matter is, while the grass growing, the horse starving.
So what then should be done? I mean, because one of the concerns that a lot of people have, government included, private sector especially, is that they would give $100,000, let's say, but accountability afterwards.
Yes, I know that is one of the main, in terms of anybody contributing to an organization, they want to know that the organization is above board, they're transparent, and Vision and Mission has that kind of credibility behind it, and somehow the other probably, because the head of the organization, I don't want to be, saying anything that may offend anybody, but I probably feel because the head of the organization too is an ex-prisoner, people mostly feel that I don't have the competence, I don't have the letters behind my name to really get the job done. But I would challenge any person within that area, any social worker, anybody, to contest with the work that I do within the community and the lives that I have affected, the lives that have been transformed via our organization in terms of what they do. We have a record of over 500 inmates we have worked with, and we have losses of approximately 15%. And we are starting to lose because of the fact we don't have mobility. Inmates come to us, we need to monitor them within the communities. We can be at their point of need at particular times. Just for example, just yesterday, I had to deal with a situation of a deportee who was deported back into Trinidad for murder. And he is within the Laventil area, and he's like in search for a meal. So he's at a particular ministry, and he's asking for food. And someone went and bring a sandwich and probably a cup of juice from probably their own table, and then tell him to go to some other ministry. And in talking to the person, I recognize that the person don't even know where they're sending him, because they don't even know Trinidad. And I am saying, look at the person is very healthy, the person is in good form and everything, and he is vulnerable, and there is the elements I'm saying will love to get hold of that person to use at their advantage.
Do you think, though, that in the interest of what you're trying to do, to have an impact on crime, to have an impact in your community, and in particular young people who might be vulnerable, that one of the things Vision on Mission could do is bring in someone who has the paper and the letters and those things that would make the philanthropists, the people giving the money, make them a little more comfortable?
I don't think
is
that
that
is in
not
question.
necessary?
I don't think that is in question. I think we have a track record. We have built that. Or we have our statistics we can show the result of we work. And I guess it's a perfect example as one who have been there and done that, and today can sit even in your studio with a total different dress code, with a total different hairstyle, with a total different language. And that is evident change, and that is evident hope. And I don't think that the best person always to do the job is someone who have been there and done that. I mean, they're looking for antidote for AIDS, and it's very virus they're using, and a lot of our treatment in terms of when we get injection is the very virus they use back to develop a panacea. So I'm saying, if you want to develop a panacea, a remedy, you have to look at those who've been there and and done that to help be a part of the solution.
Now, you spoke a little bit earlier about a Wild Wild West syndrome and terrorist mentality.
Yeah.
When you first went into prison in 1988, the situation was totally different to now.
Totally
was it
different.
not?
Yes,
and how so?
In that, in criminals was more circumspect in how they cry out and execute their intentions and what have you. They were more into planning, and a lot of killings were irrelevant. They didn't so just act out in rage as how we see now. There's a lot more consideration within the criminal circle towards crime and what have you. Now, as it is way beyond proportion. There is no consideration. There is no thinking. There is just the expression of how I feel and pleasing my mind. You get me upset, I please my mind, and there is no consideration as to how I do it. Long as I feel satisfied at the end of the day. When the guy pulled out the gun in Mover Junction and the argument, I was right there. I was in the gas station, and I was right there when the guy in Port of Spain, when the guy get killed, I was now talking to Rattle, and he walked out of the prison, and there he was lying on the wrong dead. There was no fear in this person. You understand? There was no consideration of law. There was no fear of God, and that's the kind of terrorist mentality I'm describing. There is no fear for God, man, or law. I just walk out in the blunt daylight, don't care who watching or what have you, and shoot him in the head and go and lean over his body and shoot him in his skull. And it's the same action that took place in Mova. And that's a trend that is developing in Trinidad and Tobago. That kind of assassination. That's a new criminal style now that one has to be very skeptical, because the slightest argument is a misunderstanding. A person don't have to go and hide and come back in the night to kill you. He will kill you right there in Charlotte Street. The person walking right past person in a taxi and shoot him in a taxi kind of head. So you see, that kind of trend is what our society is coming to. And who is to blame? Because the people that is involved...
Who is to blame? Who is to blame?
The social sector. The social sector, they have neglected the community, they have neglected the prison.
Who is the social sector? What?
Well, all the stakeholders involved, all those who did this, well, I shouldn't say all the stakeholders involved. I think I'm wrong with that, because there are people who within the private sector who are willing, NGOs, etc. But those who can really give, you understand, to organization who that can really get the work done and stuff like that. I'm not doing that. I mean, the community, I'm not lashing out against government, but there was a neglect in terms of community development, in terms of different social programs within the community, different incentive for the youths, proper rehabilitation program in the prison. It's just the day they wake up recently, and a lot of people came on stream with prison reform and prison life and stuff like that. But what has happened, not happened overnight. It is a result of our situation has been neglected for many years, because the mentality was throw them in the jail and lock the gate and throw away the key, and not understanding that these same individuals are returning back to the society bitter and angry at what have the society as it is today. That's why we are against the retributive model, and we are now saying we need to approach the whole restorative approach, because it will bring out a better result.
To what extent, we always hear that deportees are to blame for some of the sophistication being brought to crime in the country. To what extent have they impacted the sophistication of crime and the brashness and boldness that we see with criminals?
To about 85% or almost 90%. When I interact with deportees, and I'm hearing the kind of cleverness of these deportees, and the boldness in terms of how they do crime. You see, it have definitely impact, and there are definitely a lot involved, and there's a lot who looking to let's get back their life in Trinidad. It have affected our society, and there is a recruitment taking place.
But they couldn't be all of these great criminal masterminds if they've been deported, because it means at some point they got caught.
Yes. Well, for a criminal in the United States to get hold in New York City, right? Sometimes it doesn't be the first crime they committed. They probably must be the fifth or the fourth or what have you. And I mean, the city of New York is one that is very, very, very patrol, and there's all sort of different, things in place towards prevention. And Trinidad and Tobago being a third-class country, if I'm
third
world country, and in the way we tackle crime, a deportee, in his understanding in the environment which he used to operate, will look at the system in place here as petty and one easy to break through.
So are we seeing now deportees setting up structures, criminal structures, to rival existing structures?
No, the deportees are not the heads of what's happened, the criminal and the world in Trinidad and Tobago. They are being used because they are returning, and they have nothing to go on, and they are being used, they are being recruited by certain organizations to execute certain things. And most of them get involved in criminal life because they need a dollar. They are deported with next to nothing, and therefore when they come out and no family or relative or anything in place to assist them to reintegrate back, they have no other choice than to work for the criminal elements. And so that's what's happening. They are not the heads, and they are not forming personal organizations, as I would know being on the ground. I know a lot of them would work with organizations, you understand, to do certain things.
And what about what we're hearing in Lavantil, Mova, East Port of Spain, where they are now rival non-Muslim and Muslim gangs, and there are places where non-Muslims cannot go and where Muslims cannot go? What is happening there?
Well, there is personal tribal war in terms of turf and in terms of a number of different things. And I don't think it's a religious war. I think there are people who have a different religious persuasion, and it is just coming out as though it's religious, but it is all about the turf, and it's just about the turf. There's turf in Port of Spain that sells more drugs, that gravitate more customers and stuff like that. And if I'm in control of that turf, I don't want nothing that is a threat around my turf. And that's all about it, is that I don't want nothing that threatens my turf to be around my turf. I know you is involved in drugs and you're involved in criminal activities and you circulate within my turf. I understand, well, look, listen, you're looking to put me out of business, so therefore I want you out of my turf totally because you're not a part of my movement.
Because I get nothing from you.
Yes.
When you sell, I get nothing.
I get nothing.
But who is buying it? It couldn't be that in Laventille and Port of Spain and Mova and so on, that is only people from Laventille and Port of Spain and Mova are buying. It has to be that people are coming from outside to get
the question
drugs.
is who bringing it in?
Well, both. Who's bringing it in and who's buying?
Yes, well, you will understand for somebody to be bringing in drugs in Trinidad, it can't be them small guys in Laventille who running up and down and looking for a dollar and pulling gun and shooting one another. It has to be people in high places that has the resources to bring in the kind of drugs that we have that is polluting the society today.
Do people know who they are?
Yes, there are people. We know who they are. To identify them on television or radio program in public places could be very fatal. But the criminal world, we know who they are. We know the shipments, the kind of shipments they're bringing in. We know they are people that are very highly respected by the Commissioner of Police. They are very highly respected by big parliamentarians and so on. They are respected people. You can't just go to a station and say, look, listen, so-and-so bringing from so-and-so business, bringing in so-and-so. You might get yourself getting a frame-up case. So this is how corrupt the situation is in Trinidad and Tobago. It's corrupt from the head. And that's why the crime situation is so out of proportion. It's so, I can't find a word to describe it, but I don't think even people begin to understand in Trinidad how serious the matter is. People only getting conscious when they see the vet, people who related to the vet in Maraval get kidnapped, feel the real blunt of crime. But there are people who still going about their private life and saying, look, listen, that whole criminal situation, that crime situation, that's not my business. I'm just looking to migrate, send my family away, and that whole sense of that community life, that whole sense of village railways. I don't have that anymore. Everybody is a kind of individualism. Everybody is seeking their own welfare. Nobody loyal to even what they're doing. Social workers is all about the money. It's all about what they're doing a job for what I could get. So the country in itself is not paying attention to the young one who's sleeping in corners and in graves because there is no way. Children on the road begging for dollar and all kind of thing. And day today or tomorrow, if they don't get attention, will be the criminals that we'll have to face.
Do you think that some of the people who know what is happening by virtue of just living in a community that by chance is where they were born and would like to see better, would like to go and study, would like to be able to have a job, however big or small it is, are forced into a lifestyle of crime because the trust between the law enforcement agencies, and not just the police, going right up to the parliament and government, has been broken?
It's true. What you are saying is true, and I think I can put it in better words. Definitely. Then there is a desire, and mind you, there is hope for Trinidad. There is hope for Trinidad prison. We don't have riots in Trinidad prison. We don't have the kind of news you will hear in other prisons. There is hope for Trinidad. There is hope for the community. There are that crying out from the young people. I sit with people every day in the community. I sit with them with a gun in the waist and stuff like that. And they want help. They want help. And it is not available. Therefore, they are forced into doing what they're doing and becoming what they are. That is not them. It is being forced upon them. And then they are treated in a certain way.
So what should ordinary people do? People like me, people like our viewers, who are not big people in society. What should ordinary people do?
Ordinary people should be like you. What you're doing today is the start. Bringing the situation to the public.
No, but I have a forum. Awareness. I have a forum as a journalist. But ordinary people.
You bring me to your studio. There's so many different relevant topics you could talk about. And that awareness need to... to be out there, and people need to get involved. No longer crime is an isolated situation.
So how should a guy who works in an office, he's an accountant or whatever else, and he goes home and he has his 2 kids and his wife, and he plays golf on the weekends, or he might just have some friends, he'll go and play cricket or football in the savannah. What could these people do?
Probably find out in what way they can contribute, direct or indirectly. There is some way we all need to get involved because, as Crime Stoppers say, if we do pay attention. The gun that we ignore today might be the gun we face tomorrow. So today it's a responsibility of the entire society to get involved. Find an organization that is working with ex-prisoners, that is working with delinquents, and see what way you can strengthen the organization to get the work more done more effectively, what way you can render whatever expertise you have in whatever dimension to bring about the kind of community, the kind of nation that we would want.
And what about the bigger people now, people, businessmen and politicians and so on? What should they do?
They should change the way of thinking. A lot of them should change the way of thinking. A lot of them been hurt, they've been through certain circumstances and disappointment, etc. But they still have to come to terms that they need to change the way of thinking, because people who learn crime as a solution to problem need to understand that it's an internal problem, and that we need to really work with them from internally to change that whole ideology, that whole concept and of crime and stuff like that. They need to get more involved. You know, they need to get more involved. There's much more I would like to really say in light of that, but I guess my thoughts are a bit complicated with that question already there. But I would say that the people in higher places definitely need to change. Some of them need to change their way of thinking and contribute. I mean, a lot of people have issues with Harry Arnarine, but at the end of the day, I am still thankful, because at the end of the day, Harry Arnarine still have to have an office today. Even though today it is funded through the Ministry of Social Delivery, yet he was able to give that start in spite of. And I'm still saying that there are people still need to put their bygones away and let's focus on the issue and stop making problems political and stop holding grudges and resentment because of what have you. And that is what destroying the country, because I'm not helping because you are UNC, I'm a PNM, or because somebody of a particular a party affiliated to your organization, and it's crippling anything. And we're not dealing with the issue. We are dealing with too much of party politics, and we are not dealing with what's affecting and destroying our country, a beautiful Trinidad and Tobago.
Wayne Chance, I want to thank you for joining us, and good luck with Vision on Mission.
Thank you very much.
I'm Nirad Tewarie, thanking you, the viewer, for joining us. I hope it was as informative for you as for me. And stay tuned to IETV. We have a lot more in store for you. Take care.